Welcome back to episode 5 of the Madden Report. I'm your host, James Madden, joined alongside a special co-host, Kevin Cashman. Kevin's joining me for a breakdown and preview of the first round of the NHL Playoffs, and he's kind of our NHL specialist. Kevin, NHL Playoffs start tonight. How you feeling?
I'm excited for the Bruins to start. It's going to be fun. It's the best time of the year, and thanks for having me on the show.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And like I said, we're going to be breaking down every matchup of the first round of the NHL Playoffs, and let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. First, we have in the Atlantic Division, the number 1 seeded Tampa Bay Lightning. Florida Panthers. I'm used to saying the Tampa Bay Lightning. They seem to always win the Atlantic Division. The Florida Panthers taking on 4-seeded wild card team out of the Metropolitan Division, the Washington Capitals.
This series, honestly, is one of the easier ones to predict, in my opinion. I think Florida is just going to kill them, honestly. I don't think Washington really has a chance. They don't really have a goalie right now. I think Florida can roll 4 lines, and I think they're just a better team. They're faster, more skill. The pickups of Claude Giroux and Ben Sherratt at the trade deadline have really helped them out. I'm going to say Panthers in 5.
I totally agree with you in this one. The Florida Panthers, they won the President's Trophy, right? Yeah. They won the President's Trophy for a reason. They have been one of, if not the best team in the NHL, along with maybe Colorado. But I think they win in 4 or 5. Washington's a team that is kind of getting towards the end of the glory days of Alex Ovechkin, who still had a decent season, but not the same Alex Ovechkin there once was. So I just think the quickness and the versatility and the athletic and the speed of Florida is going to overwhelm a Colorado team, a Washington team that is kind of getting up there in age, as well as not as good as the President's Trophy winners. And we have the next matchup in the Metropolitan Division. We have, the Atlantic Division. We have the 2-seeded Tampa Bay Lightning, 2-seeded Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the 3-seeded Tampa Bay Lightning, a one that, in my opinion, can go to 7 games. It's going to be a fun one. What do you think about that one?
I think it's definitely going to go to 7 games. I mean, both those teams, they have so much skill. Tampa Bay has a really good goalie in Vasilevsky, which I think is going to be a game-changing. But they have played a lot of hockey in the last 2 years, winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. So I think Toronto's going to push it to 7, but I just think the Leafs factor in the first round. I don't think they're going to be able to get over the demons of winning in the first round, especially a Game 7. I'm going to pick Tampa in 7. But watch out for Austin Matthews. I mean, he scored 60 goals. He won the Rocket Richard. He's a guy that can take over this series and change it. But I'm still going to stick with Tampa Bay in 7.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I'm going to say Tampa in 7 as well. Not a big fan of either team, being a Bruins fan, but I think my hatred for the Toronto Maple Leafs outweighs the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I'm going to go Tampa Bay Lightning as well. They have a ton of experience. All these players know how to win in the playoffs. They've won 2 Stanley Cups in the past 2 years, and Toronto seems to not be able to win a playoff series. They have arguably one of the top teams in the NHL each and every year, but are unable to come out of the first round. So I'm going to go with a Tampa Bay team that is fueled by arguably the best goalie in the NHL, as well as some of the best players in Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, and their bottom 6 have been some of the best bottom 6 in the NHL. So, like you said, Austin Matthews certainly made a case this season for best player in the NHL, but I'm going to go Tampa Bay in 7. And we move over to the Atlantic Division, the Metropolitan Division, another Eastern Conference division that has a lot of firepower. We have the top-seeded Carolina Hurricanes, who won the Metropolitan Division, and our 4th-seeded Boston Bruins, who make into the playoffs as a wild card.
This series, I think it's going to be an awesome series. I think it's going to go 7. I hate to say it, but because I love the Bruins, but I just don't think they're going to be able to beat the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes have outscored them 16-1 in the regular season. Frederik Andersen won't be there the first couple games, which I think will help the Bruins out. But I just think Sebastian Aho and Jacob Slavin on the back end and Svechnikov, I think Carolina's really, really good, and I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Bruins. But if the Bruins are going to win, I think a guy that's going to need to have a big series is Jake DeBrusk. I think he's a game changer for the Bruins on that top line since he's been bumped up. His game is completely taken it to another level. So I think if they're going to win this series, they need Jake DeBrusk to have a very good series.
And I agree with you again, our 3rd straight series where we've had the same pick. But I'm going to go Carolina in this one as well. I think Carolina is just going to have too much. They've proven to be one of the best teams in the league. And like you said, Sebastian Aho, Jacob Slavin, even, Nino Niederreiter and Vincent Trocheck had great seasons for them as well. I had Vincent Trocheck on my fantasy team. He had a very good season for me. But I'm going to go Carolina Hurricanes in 6. I think the Bruins, I think they're a very good team, but I just think their youth and their speed is just going to overwhelm the Bruins. The Bruins team that has really turned it around this season after they kind of made line changes. They changed their first line, moved DeBrusk up to the top line, and then moved David Pastrnak down to the second line. That really changed the course of their season. So I'm going to go Carolina in 6. Yeah, Carolina team that in my bracket I made on NHL.com, I actually had going and winning the Stanley Cup. So a Carolina team I have a lot of faith in, but it's going to be a tough series for both teams, and it's going to be a real grinder. Next up, we have the 2 versus 3 matchup in the Metropolitan Division. The 2-seeded New York Rangers taking on the 3-seeded Pittsburgh Penguins.
This series is going to be another good one. I think it may have the chance to go 7. I think it's going to go 6. The Rangers, they're a young team, but Artemi Panarin is a very good player. They have Mika Zibanejad, the 2 guys they picked up at the deadline, and Andrew Kopp and Frank Vatrano, who are added to their top 6, have been great pickups for them. And Igor Shesterkin, one of the best goalies in the league, probably will win the Vezina. In Pittsburgh, they're good, but they're old. I mean, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, all those guys have played so many games. And it's probably their last run together as Malkin's a free agent. But I still think Shesterkin, he's going to steal this series, and I'm going to say Rangers in 6.
And you said it. I mean, this is the last run maybe ever for the Pittsburgh Penguins with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on the same team. But I'm going to go New York Rangers in 7. I think this is going to be very similar to the last series. It's just going to be a grinder. I think besides the Florida versus Washington series, I think all of these Eastern Conference matchups can go either way. And I'm going to go New York in 7. I like this New York team. Artemi Panarin, what he's done for the Rangers since they acquired him has been tremendous. And their goalie, Shesterkin, has had a great season. So I think, those 2 players can really change the course of this series and make it a Rangers win, and that's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to go Rangers in 7. Next up, we move over to the Central Division. We have the top-seeded Colorado Avalanche, who have been one of the best teams in the NHL, taking on the 4-seeded Nashville Predators. What do you think about this one?
This one's an easy one to predict, especially with Nashville losing UC Saros, one of the best goalies in the league. They do have Matt Duchene, who's had a great bounce-back year with 40 goals. But I just think the firepower of the Avalanche with Rantanen, McKinnon, Cale Makar, I think they're going to steamroll them, and I think they're going to win in 5 games over the Predators.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think Colorado wins this pretty handily, 4 or 5 games. And this Colorado I always have going deep into the playoffs, even winning the Stanley Cup at times, but they seem to always find a way to blow it. But I don't think they'll blow it this early. I think they'll take care of business against Nashville, a Nashville team that they've shown they're better than all season, and win in 4 or 5 games. Next up, we have a 2 versus 3 matchup. One of my favorites being that I'm also somewhat a Minnesota Wild fan. We have 2-seeded Minnesota Wild taking on the 3-seeded St. Louis Blues.
This is going to be another great series. I think it's going to go 7. Both these teams are very evenly matched. The downfall for the Blues, though, is their goalie. Whether it's either Binnington or Husso, they really don't have stability there. They've been switching them around. Tarasenko's really good. Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Ryan O'Reilly. Those guys are really good, but I just think the pickup of Marc-Andre Fleury is huge for the Minnesota Wild. I think it's going to go 7. It's going to be a war. It's going to be a bloodbath, but I have Wild in 7. And Kirill Kaprizov is one of the best players in the league.
I'm going to go with you on this one. I'm kind of being a little biased considering I wouldn't call myself a fan, but I think very highly of the Minnesota Wild. But I'm going to go Wild in 7. I think they have a ton of talent. Kirill Kaprizov, what he's done over the past year and a half for them has been truly remarkable. They picked up Marc-Andre Fleury, who is still, one of the most consistent goalies in the NHL at the trade deadline. So I think they're going to take care of business, like you said, against a St. Louis team who's a bit sketchy at the goalie position. And I think they're going to be able to use their ability to score a ton of goals and play a ton of offense to their advantage and win again over a tough St. Louis Blues team in 7. Next up, we move over to our last division. We have the Pacific Division. The top-seeded, who's the top seed over there?
Calgary.
Calgary Flames taking on the 4-seeded Dallas Stars.
This one, I think even though it's 1 versus 4, and a lot of people are picking Calgary to win this series, but people are discounting the Dallas Stars. They always show up to play in the playoffs. They always give Calgary trouble. Sagan, Ben, Radulov, I don't know who they're going to go with in goalie. I think it's probably going to be the kid Ottinger. But I really like Dallas, and I think it's going to go 7, but I'm picking the upset here. I'm going with the Dallas Stars, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Flames win. I mean, I love Matt Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, but I just think Dallas is going to win. There's got to be an upset somewhere in the first round. I'm going to go Stars in 7.
And like you said, Dallas seems to be a team that always makes a run in the playoffs, even as a low seed. And Calgary, they've really turned their ship around as well. They started this season in a tough spot, but then I remember at one point in late January, early February, they won. It was like 15, 16 in a row.
Yeah.
So Calgary easily one of the hottest teams in the NHL. So I'm going to go Calgary in 7. A Dallas team that was just, I think if they're in the Pacific, they're a 2 or a 3 seed.
Yeah.
But they were just the subject of a very tough and a very talented Central Division with teams like Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis, all having to play them 4 times a year.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go Calgary in 7, but this is another toss-up of a series that can go either way. But I think, Matt Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau is just going to be too much for a Dallas team that has firepower with Sagan and Radulov, but I just think Calgary's top 6 in their goalie play. I think Jacob Markstrom's a sneaky good goalie. So I'm going to go Calgary Flames in 7. Next up, we have our last matchup of the first round. We have the 2-seeded Edmonton Oilers, who I've been very high on going into the playoffs, taking on the 3-seeded Los Angeles Kings.
If you asked me last week, I would have said the Kings were going to win this series, but Drew Doughty is hurt, and he's the heart and soul of that Kings team. He's their best defenseman. That's going to be a tough injury for them to overcome. Dustin Brown's last run, he's going to retire after this year. But I'm still going to take the Oilers. I think they're just better. McDavid, Draisaitl. They're not in goalie. It's a little questionable. Mike Smith, he can either be one of the best goalies in the league or one of the worst goalies in the league. And I think Mike Smith's going to be able to hold down the Kings offense, and I think they're going to win in 6 games, but we'll see what happens.
And I'm with you on this one. I actually had Edmonton going to the Stanley Cup in my bracket, losing to Carolina, but I'm going to go Edmonton in 6. I think Connor McDavid is just going to be too much for an LA Kings team that doesn't really have a bona fide star. They have just a ton of guys who are good and play well together, like Kempe. They have
Kopitar.
They had Drew Doughty, but obviously they're not going to have a full Drew Doughty 100%. So I'm going to go Edmonton in 6. I think that, 2 of arguably maybe the top 2 players in the league in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, who have just been, the fact they have both those on the same team is truly amazing to me. But I think, Edmonton takes care of business and keeps trucking along to, like I said, a team that I think could go all the way. But without a doubt, it's going to be a fun NHL playoffs.
For sure. I can't wait.
But thank you for tuning in to our 5th episode of the Madden Report. Thanks you for coming on for our NHL playoff preview.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
I'm your host, James Madden, joined alongside my co-host, Kevin Cashman. Make sure to tune in to the next episode of the Madden Report. See you next time.